What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr War Games, and today I am bringing you something that hasn't been shown on YouTube yet, and that is a Darkworld branded profile. There is actually some very nice hidden synergy with this deck, which blew my mind when I noticed it, and I was like, yo, I can unlock so much potential. So, because we are exploring every different variant for Darkworld, I thought I would bring it to you guys. So, with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. If you want to see more from this particular type of deck or just more Darkworld content, then make sure you smash that like button and subscribe, because doing so shows the appreciation for this type of content and allows me to continue to do so. With all of that out of the way, let's dive headfirst into this crazy concoction of a deck. So, we'll start off with the Darkworld cards, and pretty straightforward on this one. There is a slight change to the normal lineup. So we've got triple Rainbow, triple Snow, triple Genta, and in this version we are only playing 2 Grapha. Now, we only need to play 2 Grapha because we do play a card that substitutes itself for Grapha, but can also substitute itself for other targets, and that is, of course, the Light Hexil. Now, you'll see when we get to the extra deck, you also saw a spoiler at the start of Dark Dragoon, that we have the ability for this to be a Grepher if we need it to. We also have it to be a Dark Magician, and if you wanted to get extremely spicy, you could also make this be Alistair the Invoker. And the reason that is super spicy is if you want to get really, really aggressive, you could put Purgatrio in the deck and use Catalyzer. Now, it's not just because you can just do branded fusion plays to set this up in the graveyard, but surprisingly enough, Purgatrio is a fiend, and what fusion spell do we play that relies on fiends? That is right, Darkworld Ascension. So technically, if I have Catalyzer on the field or the graveyard, and I have Light Hexil in the field or the graveyard, I could actually use Ascension to banish them to bring out Purgatrio. Now, spoiler, I'm not doing that in this version, but it's just something that I thought I'd mention. And then the rest of the Darkworlds, we've got the 1 Silver, the 1 Cerulli, and then 2 Catalyzers, because you still need ways. Catalyzer doesn't really help too much in the form of the branded extension plays, because he's a fire, he doesn't really synergize with the rest of the fusions, but you still need ways of being able to discard cards from your hand and them being controlled. So a card you could consider instead of this is Cheerful Coffin. So that was suggested to me a couple of times before. I'll have to try and find the tag on YouTube, but it's just a way of controlling the card you can discard without needing to use your normal summon, and then while also being able to set up exactly what you want in the graveyard. Then for the spells, we do play 2 Gates, 2 Ascensions, and the 1 Archive. So again, all pretty straightforward on these ones. You need these in order to discard your Dark Worlds. Obviously, the ones you want to discard yourself will be Cerulli and Snow, and sometimes Rainbow. And then you want to be using Cerulli to discard the Silver or the Rainbow, or just the Grapha in general as well. That's where Archives comes into play as well, so it gives you a bit more draw power. As we're not playing the Law or Trading in this version, this will be one of your best draw cards. And of course, it is another way, as long as you get a Darkworld on the board, through Genta you should be doing so by being able to put those in the grave. Keeping in mind as well that through Branded Fusion you can actually put Grepha from the deck to the grave. In theory, you could actually even put Rainbow from deck to grave. And as long as you leave it in there, you're then able to bounce it back to the field by returning a Darkworld. So you've got more synergy plays to work that way as well. But the main kind of synergy you've got to look for is actually Ascension. Now, a lot of people don't know this because they just go, oh, I'll just do it with Branded Fusion. But all of the Despias, or the Despia Fusion, Quintarius, Masquerade, and even, wherever it is, Praskinian, are fiends. So, Darkworld Ascension actually acts like a better branded in white, because it doesn't rely, yes, you can search the branded in white, but you can also search the Ascension technically, but the bit about this is you don't need Fallen of Albaz. So all I need to be able to do is banish fiend monsters from the graveyard, and that will then allow me to pretty much use an Aluba or a Tragedy in the graveyard, more so to get me a bit more advantage. I could also use a Dramaturge. They then will be giving me the ability to use the Darkworlds in the graveyard that either I no longer need, or might want to be able to be utilised better off being banished, because then you can spin them back with Lubellion. But this can give me Quintarius, Masquerades, and of course Proskinians as well. So that's it for the Darkworld lineup. Moving on to the branded lineup. So I've tried to keep this like a 50-50 split. It's probably more of a 60-40 split in the form of the Despia like branded engines, but that's just because they require more. So, as you've seen in all the previous profiles, your Darkworlds do not care about a normal summon, so you have the best normal summon for the entire deck, and that is, of course, Aluba. So normal summon of Aluba, search you out your branded fusion. It also searches you out some of the other branded targets that we do play as well. So your branded opening, which is actually incredibly important because this becomes another card that discards as effect, meaning you can trigger your Darkworlds off the back of it. So you wouldn't actually ever neg, because then what you do is you discard your Darkworld, and then that Darkworld will then recycle. So the card you've discarded for the branded opening actually nets you a plus to get you to a card you want it to be. And then, of course, branded opening can search out or replace itself, or even special someone out on the Luba. We've then got, of course, 2 Fallen of Albaz, alongside 2 Tragedy, the 1 Adler Byton, the 1 Dramaturge. Now, obviously, the Adler Buttons, I still feel is really important because it still allows you to bring back any fusion monster. And then, of course, you've also got Dramaturge. Keeping in mind that when you get Adler Byton to the graveyard, if you don't banish it off a Branded Red or anything like that, you still have Ascension, which will allow you to do the exact same thing and recycle it, and so will Dramaturge as well. Then, another surprising factor that kind of synergizes, Edgimp Chain is a Fiend. So if I open up this and a Grepher or a Root to Grepher, I can actually activate Darkworld Ascension and discard that and Chain. Chain can then, of course, resolve, and that will search you out a Patchwork, leading you into Poly. Now, you could play a 2, 2, and 2. I've gone with the smallest engine possible just to kind of test it out right now to see if it bricks me down or if I feel that I need it more. But it just gives you another form of fusing. Now, of course, for your natural fusing abilities, you are going to have the triple branded fusion alongside the double ascension. And then you also have theatre and branded in red. So in theory, you're going to have, I believe, a total of 8 fusion spells. 3 branded fusions, 2 ascensions, 1 theatre, 1 red, and 1 poly. And obviously with the poly, you kind of want to use that for your Chimera. You also then want to be using it for, you know, more generic stuff, or just hard fusing into other stuff as well. But keep in mind as well, poly can be used to make the Grapho Fusion Dragon as well. So you've got so many different options, it's absolutely crazy. And then, of course, I already explained how good branded opening is in this deck because it allows you to have an additional card that will trigger your Darkworlds both during your turn and your opponent's turn. And then the last 2 cards I'm playing is the 1 Expulsion with the 1 Ras Disciple. Yes, it does mean you have to go a little bit out of your way, but at the end of the day, it's near enough an auto win if I give this to my opponent and they can't deal with it. Like the fact they can't tribute it, they can't special summon or anything like that, they then even need to try and crash it to clear it off the board, or they then need to be able to kind of like use a Forbidden Droplet, which few people are actually playing. On top of that as well, it is a level 4 if you definitely wanted to kind of utilize that. But the whole idea is you want it to stay in deck. If you want to cut this deck down to a 42 card or even a 40 card deck, you can cut this out completely. But I just see it as a very simple win con, and it works out really, really nicely. So all you really need to do is like, you need an Aluba basically. So you normal summon Aluba, you get your branded fusion, you activate your branded fusion, you bring out your dragons. Then what you do is you then use your Mirror Jade to send the Albion. The Albion will then, of course, banish the Aluba, and that's just your very one-direct, one-card route to it. But then there are other routes and ways of extending the board and playing off the back of the board using stuff like your Darkworlds as well. So that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. So, for the extra deck, as I said, using the Light Hexil, you do gain access to Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, which is just a really, really cool, powerful card. If you wanted to, like I said, that can become your Alistair the Invoker Purgatrio, or if you're like, I'm not even wanting to play the Light Hexil, you can just put whatever you want in here. Then for the Albaz monsters, I've got 1 Alba Lunatus with 2 Albion. If you don't want to play Lunatus, you can play 3 Albion, it's entirely up to you. I'm risking it with the 1 Lubellion and the double Mirror Jade, just because throughout the combo you'll kind of want to be circling back the Lubellions. But as I've already mentioned, you kind of really want to focus on your Fiend fusion monsters, and that's pretty much where the rest of the Despiers come in. So a Quintarius can be incredibly powerful. Keeping in mind, you've got to do it at the right time, because Quintarius changes the attack of all monsters on the field until 0, except at level 8 or higher fusion monsters. So if you do it too early, then you're not going to be able to get the full effect from it. If you do it too late, you're going to reduce in all of your other big boss monsters. So the idea is that you kind of want to do this when you've got a lower level, so something like Silver or Genta on the board, and then you start bouncing them all back to bring out your Greffers and your Rainbows, and you've pretty much pushed for a near guaranteed OTK. And then, of course, Tubble Masquerade, because your opponent might be like, aha, I've got rid of your branded red, I've got rid of your branded fusion, like, I'm not worried about this at all, and you just go, Ascension, banish fiend monsters from the graveyard. Obviously 1 Despia and then a light or dark monster. And that straight away is going to allow you to get into the Masquerade because it is a fiend. So just so everyone is completely clear on Darkworld Ascension, during the main phase, fusion summon 1 fiend fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing materials mentioned on it from your field or graveyard. If you are fusion summoning a Darkworld monster this way, you can also discard monsters as material. Now, obviously, if you're not going into the graph of fusion, you can't discard, but you can still banish from the field or graveyard, which is what makes it incredibly powerful, which is also why I'm playing the 1 Proskinian, because this one requires 1 Despia monster, 1 light monster, and 1 dark monster. Now, it's a little bit tricky to get the light monster. Like, your best target is something like a Ra's Disciple, but you also have the light Hexiel, so keep that in mind. But it was just the idea that, in theory, my Brandon Red could lead me into, like, a Mirror Jade. Sorry, not a Mirror Jade. Can lead me into, like, a Chimera. Where is he? There we go. Can lead you into Chimera. But then an Ascension that can be recycled. Keep in mind, you can activate Ascension during your turn. Give yourself a Graphite Dragon. And then you can use the effect of it to discard a Darkworld, trigger the Darkworld's effect, add it back to the hand and reset it. So you're then playing with a Branded Red plus an Ascension. And an Ascension can lead you into any of these, while the Branded Red can lead you into this. Like, it's just insane, that little bit of synergy that works really, really well with the deck. Heck, you could just make like a Despia Darkworld deck if you wanted to, but, you know, Branded Fusion is just too nuts. And then the last card I'm playing is the 1 Bagooska. Now, the reason I've got this is for the pure fact that if my opponent... obviously, the chances are, when you activate Branded Fusion, that is when they'll D-shift you. But if they early doors D-shift you and literally just go draw phase, and they go, cool, D-shifter, then what you do is you like normal summon Aluba searches out Branded Fusion, and then all you really need to try and do is trigger off the Genta. That'll then give you a level 4. Now, you don't use the Branded Fusion, you can even hold on to a Branded in red if you want to, but the idea would be, as long as you've got that Genta as a free summon, or you've got the... Salamander as a free summon, you can then just overlay the 2 into Bagooska before you activate the Branded Fusion. This will like pretty much protect you because the decks that are using D-Shifter can't play for a Bagooska unless they open up something like an Imperm or a Dark Ruler, then that's just luck of the draw. But the idea would be that under a shifter you sit on Bagooska and you know you've got a Branded Fusion for the next turn. So you pretty much go, okay, cool, I'll play under the shifter, pass to you, you can't play, I detach material from the Bagooska. Then if you're ready to push for the OTK, you flip it to attack, activate your Branded Fusion, do what you need to do. Or you leave it in defense, you can still activate your Branded Fusion, you'll just need to play it a little bit differently because whatever you summon out will be negated. So you'd play the Branded Fusion, for example, you could Branded Fuse into your Grapha Dragon, put that into defense, and then what you're doing is you're setting up your plays for the following turn. So then the next turn when you have to detach your Bagooska, you can put this to attack. Ideally, you've tried to push for another Branded Fusion, or you normal summon into another Branded Fusion. Then you've already got your Grapha Dragon, so you switch that to attack as well, and then you Branded Fuse, and that's when you can go into your Mirror Jade. So your board will be Bagooska, Mirror Jade, and Grapha Dragon. Not to mention, Mirror Jade can then clear a card off, and you're pretty much good to push for the game that way. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind that should you get with the worst cards of this format, in my opinion, in the forms of stuff like D-Shifters, I know they're completely necessary evils because of the type of decks that are running around, but if you do have to face down a D-Shifter, which is probably one of this deck's biggest weaknesses, you do have ways to kind of play around it, play through it, and, you know, get to your ultimate end goal without worrying too much. Anyway, that is pretty much it for the video. I hope it's given you a couple of ideas of your own one. Like I said, this is a concept in working. Like, it's not completely hashed out yet, but I've tried to keep the balance where at all I could. And then I'm playing around with different options in the extra deck, different options in the main deck, and kind of seeing where I can push it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. If you want to see more content like this, then of course make sure you smash that like button. Showing the appreciation for this type of content allows me to continue to produce this type of content for you all as well. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.